Good morning, Chicago Cubs fans, and what a beautiful Monday day it is supposed to be. I hope you're all going to have a fantastic start to your week. We're going to review the series with the Cubs today. We're going to have some more injury update on Javier Assad. Bryce Harper made some interesting comments over the weekend, and if you watched Saturday's game on Fox, there were some confirmations on the rumor about Jesus Luzardo going to the Cubs in the offseason. But before we get into all that, ladies and gentlemen, a big shout out and thank you to all of you who are checking out the channel, enjoying the videos. Again, if you truly do enjoy them, like the video, comment, and subscribe. We totally appreciate it here at Cubs Daily. My question for you is, how interested do you think Bryce Harper and the Cubs were going to be? How interested do you think Bryce Harper was interested in coming to the Chicago Cubs? Let me rephrase. Give me a percentage in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. I'll break it down more here in the video, but first, let's get into Javier Assad. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, there is some major setbacks in his oblique. It's upgraded to a grade 2 oblique strain, and now he's out for an indefinite period of time. So, I believe he strained this oblique in early February before spring training when the pitchers and catchers reported early. He was warming up, got hurt, then he was out for pretty much all spring training. He did get a couple of rehab starts down in AAA in the middle of April, and he was okay. He wasn't fantastic by any means, but he was getting revved up, warmed up, and unfortunately, there's just been a major setback. His oblique strain, I think it restrained itself, and now it's a grade 2, and now he's going to be sidelined indefinitely for a little bit. So, unfortunately, there's no timetable on Javier Assad's return to the Chicago Cubs Major League and or just pitching in general. Hopefully, we can get him back in July or August, but I think this is a good arm that the Cubs will need down the stretch here to make that postseason push. So, Javier Assad is going to be out. This might force the hand of Jed to go out and get another pitcher. And I'm not talking about some, Colin Ray last-second signing or a Cosgrove signing or a Drew Pomeranz type signing, anything like that. I'm talking about giving up some assets and going out and getting a high-quality arm. I think that's what the Cubs are going to be forced to do here, and honestly, that might be the best thing for this team going into the future. And, going out and proving that, you're like, hey, I want to contend. I want to win the Central, and I want to go to the playoffs. This might help Kyle Tucker maybe take a little bit off the extension, but just want to be here in Chicago for the remainder of his career and at least the remainder of his prime years. So, let's talk about this series with the Phillies. There's a lot of different storylines to go about, right? Kyle Schwarber's returning back to Chicago. Nick Castellanos was a former Cub as well. But it kind of started this weekend with Bryce Harper talking about that 2019 offseason where he was a free agent. One of the original videos on my personal channel was, a simulation with Bryce Harper becoming a Cub. I wanted the Cubs to pursue him. I thought he would be the perfect piece for this team. We had the core in place. Now, again, I know the Cubs didn't want to necessarily spend the money, but going to get a bat like Bryce Harper, a big-time name, he'd still be here in the middle of that contract. It would, again, it might not work out the same as it is now with this team specifically, but going to get Bryce Harper would have been very, very awesome. And this was his comments this weekend as he comes back to Wrigley. He's like, hey, going into that offseason, they were the number one team on my list. Without a doubt. Now, I don't know what his full list entails. I want to believe about 85% of this. I believe Bryce Harper on his angle. I also believe on the angle that the Cubs didn't even reach out to him. Because you know what? They probably thought the price point was way too high. Bryce Harper, I believe, made $319 million, which in the grand scheme of things, where everyone's at now, is very, very cheap and very, very solid for that bat and that production. So honestly, in the grand scheme of what they're going to have to pay Kyle Tucker, Bryce Harper might have been worth it if they would have invested in him a little bit earlier. So, I don't know what to do. The Cubs make their decisions, They run their operation. It's been frustrating as a fan because that they have the potential, they have the money, but they just don't want to spend it. So, Harper with the interesting comments there. I'm not sure how it would have played out here in Chicago. I'm not sure how the rest of that core would have played out either. Might have got a little bit more extension on it. Might have won another World Series. Those are all just hypotheticals in this land. I think the Cubs did make the right move. They pivoted away from the core and started to rebuild at a different capacity, and now they're becoming competitive again. So, either way, I think it worked out for both parties. But We had another rumor speculating this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, with our man Jesus Luzardo, who pitched a gem on Saturday against the Cubs. I mean, the Phillies scored 10 runs, so that's usually going to win a lot of ball games. But there was a rumor the Cubs were interested in Luzardo, and Ken Rosenthal confirmed this weekend that the Cubs had a deal in place for Luzardo in the offseason with the Marlins. But I don't think the Cubs really like the physicals of Luzardo. I'm not sure what they saw specifically, but it was enough to say, hey, we're shying away from this guy. I'm not sure what they had to give up necessarily, but I mean, it looks like it's working out for the Phillies so far. Again, you can't make every move. You're not going to win every move either. The Cubs are very due diligent in their work. They're very secretive in their work. They don't, like, Jed keeps things close to the vest, as you guys know. A lot of trades and signings are very, very secretive with this team, so you got to expect the unexpected. And so the Cubs didn't make the move. I'm not saying I get it, because I would love to have Jesus Luzardo on my team, but, you know, I like to say this, especially with my job and everything, you know, when you don't get something it's setting up for something better. I think the Cubs are trying to set up for something even better than Jesus Luzardo, who's a fantastic pitcher, by the way. He's having a great year. But I think they want to go out and get a true number one ace. If one is readily available, that's what they want to give up their assets for. So keep your eyes peeled out for that. I know we've talked about it in the comments before, like Sandy Alcantara or Pablo Lopez. So if one of those teams are ready to deal one of those guys, the Cubs are going to be sitting at the table with their hands ready to go out. So that's it for that. Let's talk about the rest of the series. The Cubs do drop 2 of 3 to the Phillies. They lose in extras last night, 3-1. They get blown out on Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, the Cubs are going to lose some games here at some point. If you're going to sit here and tell me, with that schedule, with that start to the season, that we'd be 17-12, I would have been like, where do I sign? Where do I sign for the check? How much is my monthly subscription? You know what I'm saying? That is a fantastic start. The Phillies are a really good ball club, and their record is not indicative of how good of a team they are, okay? That lineup is way too loaded to not sit back and be like, hey, they're going to figure it out at some point. And you know what? They got a couple wins here at Wrigley this weekend. April baseball is way different than October baseball. The Cubs just have to be ready in October for, you know, the See Red October of Philadelphia, because that team's going to be very, very tough. It's a very, very good ball club. And they just outlasted the Cubs these last 2 games. No doubt about it. They were patient at the plate. They got to extra innings. They forced the hand of the Cubs pitching, and they got the job done. But the Cubs get the day off today, and then they head to Pittsburgh tomorrow for hopefully a beautiful get-right series where we should bare minimum take 2 of 3. But you guys know how the Pirates are. They play tough baseball against us. Everyone in the Central plays tough baseball against us. And I'm also just curious to see the natural letdown, right? From just having to be locked in from 29 games, all 29 games against teams above 500, the Cubs might have to sit back and be like, they might take a natural, like, decompression breath, right? Don't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cubs lost on Tuesday. I wouldn't be, because just the intensity and the focus they've had to play with these last 29 games, they might need to take a breather for a second, and the Pirates might capitalize. I'm just that kind of fan. The emotions of the game, it's really, really tough. Baseball is one of the toughest sports to handle your emotions and stay even keel. Now, this team has done a fantastic job of it. They've always bounced back, it seems like. So I would love to see them bounce back and maybe sweep this Pirates team. But this week is a fantastic week to gain some separation, right? We got 3 in Pittsburgh and 3 in Milwaukee. So, yeah, the Cubs dropped 2 of 3 to the Phillies. It's actually our first series loss of the season. So I'm not thinking too much about it. The Phillies are a really good team. So let's take the day off, get into Pittsburgh, move on to the next one, and that will be that. So May is here, a lot lighter of a schedule in terms of competition. I think we got the Rockies and the White Sox here at some point. So the Cubs will get some more W's and hopefully extend that NL Central lead. So that's going to do it for me today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all have a fantastic start of your week, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another one.